I would like to start the course with maybe one of the most memorable games for me in all my chess career, if not the most memorable, at least in the 90s. It was played in Dos Hermanas tournament. Dos Hermanas is a small town nearby beautiful Seville in Spain. And for a few years in the middle of 90s, there was a very top tournament organized there. 1996 was, I think, the strongest tournament organized. Out of top players participating, 8 were top 10 players, including Garry Kasparov and, almost everyone. So it was also, I played Gelfand, Ivanchuk, Topalov, Kamsky, Shirov. Sorry if I forgot someone, but that was a real tournament. And I remember the game with Garry was played closer to the end of the tournament in around 7. I started the event with 5 draws. Actually, not really getting much with white, couldn't really get any serious winning chances with white, and being on the edge of losing with black, 2 games against Veselin Topalov and Gata Kamsky, extremely sharp, very interesting games. Also, by the way, if you are interested to have a look at those games. But I was really on the edge of losing, saving those games almost miraculously. So somehow nothing was... there was no reason to be extremely optimistic about my overall chances in this tournament, especially because I had next 3 games. I had white with Anand, black with Kasparov, and black with Ivanchuk. Not an easy, and those were top 5 players, all of them. Not something funny for any player, actually. And then I would end the tournament with playing white against Alexei Shirov. So, of course, I was, if somebody would have offered me 50% in those 3 games, let's say 3 draws or 1 victory, 1 loss, 1 draw, I would immediately grab his hand, of course, for sure. Especially considering I had 2 blacks. Okay, I was also already top player. I think I was number 1 even at that moment for a very short period. I think it was the only period in Garry's career when he lost his number 1 spot in first half of 96. So I was nominally number 1, but very soon Garry, of course, overtook me again to be back number 1 until the end of his career. But in any case, of course, it wasn't an easy task to play these 3 games. But to my surprise, actually, I won all 3 games. So I won. First, I managed to beat Vishay Anand in a lone endgame, squeezing some advantage. Then suddenly I won with black against Garry Kasparov, and the next day black against Vasily Ivanchuk. Also I won, and drawing the last round against Alexei Shirov actually was enough for me to win the tournament with +3. So a memorable tournament, obviously a very memorable game, because not all top 10 players actually have ever won a single classical game against Garry Kasparov in their whole career. For instance, if I'm not mistaken, I think, for example, Alexei Shirov and even Boris Gelfand, they never won a single game against Garry Kasparov. So, and I managed to do it with black, playing black. Actually, we've played altogether, dozens of classical games against Garry Kasparov, not mentioning Blitz and Rapid, then it will be much, much more. But only if we are talking about classical games, definitely quite a number. And it was the only actually game in all our encounters which was won by black. So all other games were whether drawn, whether won by white. And of course the style, I remember, I was extremely, happy after this game, not only because of victory and maybe not even because of the victory, but because of the way it was done. It was really kind of crushing, crazy attack, desperado attack, and just managed to crush Garry. Of course, with black, it was something extremely special, very special for me. And That's why let's start with this game. Let's start the course with that game. So Gary have started with d4 this game. Actually, a couple of months ago, he managed to beat me in a very interesting game, Sharp Sicilian. He started with e4 at that time. I think it was Amsterdam tournament 1996. This time, for a change, he decided to crush me after d4. But seriously speaking, yeah, he would always change his first move when he would play against me in classical chess. I would say that equally he would play e4, d4. Unfortunately for him, later on he decided in our World Championship match in London to stick with e4, and that was probably a mistake at that time. But in the 90s, yeah, it was difficult to prepare against Gary, not only because of other reasons, but also because, yeah, it was difficult to guess his first move, actually. So this time d4, I was playing Slav at that time, this Meran variation, a very sharp one. Well, in general, in the 90s, my opening repertoire was very sharp. So it was Sicilian against e4. I used to play Rauser a lot. Then slowly moving to Sveshnikov variation later on. And against d4, my main weapon at that time was Slav, Meran, very sharp line. Sometimes even I would play Botvinnik variation, the sharpest probably opening existing in this area of chess, if we are talking about serious established openings. And then later on, I moved to more classical openings like Queen's Gambit, Nimzo, when we get older, we want something more quiet. But at that time, I was young, so when we are playing this game, I was just 20 years old. I wanted to play sharp. I wanted to play very risky and attacking or counter-attacking chess. So Gary is playing e3, so he is going for Meran. This is very well-known Meran theory, bishop b7, castles. Yeah, at that time there are other moves also here, but at that time castles was the main continuation, the main in the sense of fighting for advantage. a6, so Blake is preparing c5, e4, c5, d5. Yeah, this is the Tabia. Lots of games played, of course, here. Very sharp, very interesting position. I think that finally now it's considered to be okay for Black, but still I'm not sure if the last word had been said already about this position. It's very complicated. So c4, one of the possible moves, bishop c2, queen c7. And now the main line, and probably it's still the main line, is taken on e6, f takes e6, and knight g5, for instance. Blake is playing knight c5, and lots of theory here. I think Gary has played some other games, some more games in this line. But I remember against Vladimir Akapian, he played the game, and it was a draw finally also a few months after this one. So I think all in all, Blake is doing fine here, but it's pretty much in the Gary style because Black king is still in the center, and White can develop certain initiative. But at the same time, I must admit that White also has a risk of getting worse here because of this d3 square for the knight, and Black's pieces are also very active. Anyways, there is a lot of theory, but Gary decided to play 13 knight d4 move. It was a rare move. Actually, it's still quite a rare move, but it caught me, by surprise, more or less, with this move. I mean, I knew the theory. I knew that this move was not considered to be too dangerous, well, the idea is that if White can also try first to take on e6 and play knight d4 here, but the major difference is that after knight c5, well, Black wants to pin this knight with rook d8 or even long castle. And if White is playing b4 here, then Black has a very important resource, long castle. B takes c5, bishop takes c5, and Black is getting this piece back because of the pin on the D line, and he's probably just better here. That's why the idea of Gary was to start with knight d4, and after knight c5 to play b4. Well, a more solid move is e5. Here, actually also playable. also playable. The white's idea is to play knight f5, g6, and now maybe knight h6, because in this way it's quite difficult for black to finish his development, to castle somewhere. Of course, black doesn't want to give up his bishop or his black square bishop. But still, since the position is pretty closed, I wouldn't say that it definitely leads to white's advantage, but it's quite unpleasant. I think that if we are talking about the theoretical part of this game, then probably I would recommend you to play knight c5 with black. I think it's a better move. And b4. Okay, this is the idea. Of course, now black don't have this very important resource long castle because the d line is closed. But white is not in time, to manage d fe already, because after cb, ab, b4 now is played. Well, knight is attacked, knight a4, knight c takes e4, and that was the state of the theory at that moment. That after d takes e6, there was a game, I think, or few games in this position. Then black is playing bishop d6, and he's in time to make long castle. And of course, if black manages to develop, he has very active pieces and a very good position, so no problem at all. But Gary came up with a novelty at that time. He took on e4 first, knight takes e4, and d takes e6 here. And I remember, yes, I started to, I think it took me like 40 minutes, my next move, because I tried to understand what's the point. Why did Gary gave up his very powerful bishop on c2? And and I understood that, there are a lot of tactical problems in this position. It's not so easy for black to get his king safe, to manage to castle. So I think I have to play bishop d6 here because, my king is really in the center. Now the e file will be open very soon, so I really need to hurry. Bishop d6. Of course, e takes f7 check, otherwise black just castles next. And now there was a difficult choice, actually, for me. That is what took me so long to understand what to do, because I can take with a king or with a queen. Of course, preferably queen takes f7, everybody would play, followed by castle. Then black would just be better. But as you will see in the game, there are some issues also with this move. Actually, king takes f7 probably is okay. Finally, probably is okay. It looks very scary, especially over the board, especially against a well-prepared opponent. And don't forget about the name of this opponent. Yeah. So queen h5 check, g6, and nowadays engines assess it as more or less equal this position, or maybe tiny better for white. So in general, it's okay. But you understand that it was clear to me that Gariev just started his analysis here. Yeah, that he has still this position analyzed, and I have to play with my king in the center over the board against very well prepared Garry Kasparov. So not the best prospect you can imagine playing chess. But objectively, maybe it's holdable. White has actually quite a number of options. For instance, queen h6 is possible to play, or queen h3. I think I was a bit worried about queen h3 during the game. Queen c8, for instance, trying to stop, queen e6 check or knight e6. Then white has f3, for example, a very unpleasant move, because I'm not in time, obviously, to exchange my queens on h3 because of fe check, and then taken on h3, piece up for white. And let's say after knight c3, queen h4, and now, it doesn't look great. Yeah, obviously now computer finds some amazing move h6. Don't ask me why. And it's almost impossible to find this move over the board. And for some reason, still believe that black should hold here. But you understand, this is also, so I took queen takes f7. This is a very important also point psychological, if you want. I would like to share my experience, my chess wisdom with you, that sometimes actually, yeah, it's better to risk sometimes, but to take the initiative in your hands, because this position, even if it's objectively fine for black, but frankly, it's clear, yeah, that it's much easier to play with white. And this aspect of chess is actually very important. It's not only about the objective assessment of the position. It's also pretty much about whose play is simpler. And here, well, white has a nice initiative, open lines, and to play with this king in the center. There is no clear prospect of getting the king safe in the near future, because as you see, rook cannot retreat, from h8 because h7 pawn is hanging. Otherwise, black would go rook e8, king g8, then will be relatively safe, the king. But, so sometimes it's, you need to assess how difficult actually is your defense in some positions. And I decided assessing also the style of Gary, which I already played quite a number of games with Gary. And of course, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Well, in practically everything, but especially in playing against opponent's king, developing the initiative. Yeah, he was extremely resourceful and probably the best in the history of all chess players. Well, maybe also all in all, but especially in this component, he was just incredible. And so then, trying to understand what to do, I decided, okay, let's try queen f7, because I saw that this move actually is connected with a piece sacrifice. Queen takes f7, and frankly, I was not quite sure if it's good enough for black. But the prospect of, as I've explained already, of playing under attack against your opponent who analyzed it at home, this position was even less, optimistic. So I decided, let's try to do this. So it's an important issue. Sometimes makes sense to play a risky move, maybe even objectively a little bit dubious, but that gives you initiative, that turns the direction of the game. And Gary he told me after the game that he didn't seriously analyze queen takes f7 because he thought, okay, it's a piece, and computers at that time were assessing it. At least at the beginning, the engines were pretty weak, so they would take the piece and say that white is better. So he paid most of his attention on king takes f7 move. So it was a good also psychological choice, and actually it's objectively the best move in the position. So of course f3, well, as I've mentioned already, if black manages to castle, has no problem whatsoever. So f3, and now, well, of course, not retreating with a knight. Let's say if you go somewhere, I don't know, let's say knight c5, of course this check is the killer, yeah? The king is just very weak in the center, you're just losing material probably very soon. So another way to sacrifice a piece, actually to get back some material, is to castle immediately. F takes e4, and now to take on h2 and take on f1. Takes, and there is a limited material, and it seems that normally black would have been pretty close to a draw, but knight c5 is very painful. This knight is too strong. And maybe black still has some drawing chances, but it's clear that white is just much better here. So that was not the option. So my only reasonable move is to play queen h5. Of course, that was what I was calculating in advance. And g3. White has to play g3 because in case of h3, I have queen e5 move, very important, threatening queen h2, and after f4, queen f6. So now my knight on f4 is secured, and I can castle next and being at least equal, in this position. So of course, after queen h5, g3 has to be played, and again, well, I cannot really retreat with the knight safely because of rook e1 check, and my king is getting under mating attack. So I have to sacrifice a piece in this position, and so the question is how exactly to do it. in what move order, and there are two ways here to sacrifice a piece. And frankly, I've chosen the wrong one actually, but the choice here is extremely difficult. I mean, what I want with this course and with showing you this particular game, I will show you quite many variations here. But don't misunderstand me. You might feel like it's just too complicated. But I can assure you that even top players, even the very top players, we haven't seen, most of those variations. I can assure you, because it's just too much. Yeah. So what I wanted, I want to show those lines sometimes because they're just beautiful. They're just some amazing moves which normally you wouldn't even think of, and these moves are decisive. They're very, very strong moves, and there are quite many. So it's also aesthetically kind of pleasant. But also my idea is to show you that in such positions, actually your resourcefulness is the main asset. Yeah, is all what matters. It's not that much about the assessment of the position. Yeah, because if you are playing a positional game, Queen's Gambit, you have a weak square or weak pawn. Well, most probably, if you're playing on a decent chess level, you will suffer till the end of the game. Maybe you'll make a draw, maybe you will lose, but you'll definitely not win. And in those positions, the assessment objective assessment of the position is much more important. That if you are worse, it's really worse. Yeah, it's really like, you will suffer. In such sharp situations like we see now on the board, actually it's much less important because the position is so complicated. It's almost impossible to play it perfect over the board for any chess player. Even as you will see in this particular game, we both made some mistake at some point. Yeah, so it's impossible to play it perfect, and therefore it can easily turn from winning to losing. Just one mistake, actually not even an obvious mistake, which, after you come back home, you analyze with engine, finally you understand where was a mistake. But objectively, humanly, it's not so obvious. So this mistake can turn tables completely, from winning to losing and other way around. So that's why in such situation, what is the most important is actually not to think too much about the objective assessment of the position. Okay, of course, you need certain intuition to feel, well, if your attack is enough or not enough, or it's a bit dubious. But finally, the one who is on top in such games is the one who is more resourceful, who finds the most amount of hidden resources in a position, who calculates better, who has, after all, who makes the last mistake. Yeah, who is so. That is why that this game is a good example. So I want to show you some lines. There will be those lines might be a bit complicated sometimes, but beautiful and I think quite instructive. Yeah. So if you want, you can take your time. In the during this course, I will also try to get you involved, not only to be a passive listener, but also to get involved, to try to think on your own. And here I would advise you to stop the video if you want, and to try to calculate some variations, to try to get certain ideas. How would you play with black? And of course, it's impossible to calculate it out till the end. It's completely impossible, but just at least to find what ideas black has in this position, and what would be your choice if you would be playing black here. So actually, the best move here was knight takes g3, the most logical move, by the way. If already to sacrifice the knight, then at least to get a couple of pawns for the piece. But I didn't like the following continuation. Well, of course, not queen e1 check. If white is trying to make this intermediate check, then black can retreat knight e4 because the threatening mate on h2, and after rook a2, castles, fe, takes, rook e8, it's pretty clear that black has a very powerful attack here. So that was not a problem. The problem was h take g3, castles now. And white doesn't have really a comfortable way to protect the pawn on g3, but I was not sure about rook a2, I remember, during the game, because now the problem is that, of course, I have two pawns already for the knight, but white managed to get his rook on g2. It seemingly there is not much of an attack anymore. In fact, it's not clear who is going to attack now. And after bishop e5, it's, well, the only reasonable move. Knight c5, and of course, it's above human abilities to calculate this position precisely till the end. I didn't like it. I mean, I couldn't really see. The bishop is hanging, knight e6 is coming, white is becoming very active. Actually, seemingly it shouldn't work for black. But, well, it does work. I mean, tactically, because after rook a d8, now, in case if bishop e3, protecting the knight, then black can retreat already his bishop to c8. Very annoying pin on d line and threatening bishop h3, so he's doing well here. But after knight c6, well, it looks like black is losing some more material, but actually bishop takes f3 is enough to make a draw. Very, very complicated, of course, variation. Rook takes f3, rook takes f3, and now you need to see that after knight takes d8, white is already two pieces up, but there is bishop h2 check. Well, sacrificing another piece, and after rook takes h2, rook g3 check. The queen on d1 is hanging, and let's say rook g2, queen takes d1 check, takes, and black wins. Therefore, queen takes f3 has to be played. And now black actually is just in time to make a draw, taking on d4 with check, and queen takes f3, and he's saved with rook d1 check, taking the bishop on c1, and the position is drawish here. So, of course, yeah, you see, again, what I mentioned earlier, that how complicated are variations, and sometimes you need to guess right, you need to have, well, you can also say intuition, but sometimes it's not really so much intuition. It's about a calculation, which at times is just too much for a human. Yeah, I mean, taking this decision after g3. I mean, if I taken on g3, I had to calculate basically the whole line till the end to find all the resources. Otherwise, it could have been just bad. Yeah, so it was objectively a mistake, but in I would say, humanly speaking, it's not really a mistake. We are not gods, we are not computers. Yeah, you cannot really manage to calculate it all in such a complicated position. That is why, again, I want to mention, that is why it's, the resourcefulness. I mean, there are always in these positions, in such positions, there are always more mistakes than in regular positions. So it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, the task is very difficult for both players here. So, but I found that's because I didn't like knight takes g3, wrongly so, as we understand now. But I decided to sacrifice the piece in a different way. I decided to castle. Of course, this looks really too much, yeah, because it's just sacrificing a piece, a pure piece, for a kind of positional compensation, for a long-term attack. I was not sure at all, I can promise you. Yeah, I was not sure it's going to work, but at least it was interesting. I mean, I felt that black has quite a serious initiative, and also that white, Garry Kasparov, had already is playing over the board. Yeah, he didn't analyze it, and the task is not so easy here. I've played queen h3 again, just to show you how many resources are in such positions. That of course there is a move queen e5, but we rejected it both rather quickly. because of rook e1 and okay, bishop f4 is coming. It seems like it's just a piece. Yeah, there is nothing black can do. But in fact, computers are finding a way for black to stay in the game and maybe even to equalize with an amazing resource. I mean, really, it wouldn't cross your mind. It didn't cross my mind during the game, but the only move here is bishop b8. Just, being a piece down, slowly improving the position of your bishop, just trying to get to a7 with a bishop. I mean, incredible move. Only computers can find it. And now after bishop f4 takes on f4 takes, because of this spin, okay, queen h2 is threatening, but because of this spin, queen c2, bishop a7, it seems that black is just in time to get enough counterplay here. For example, after rook a d1, quiet move rook e8, just putting pressure on the e4 pawn, as if nothing is happening, as if black is not rook down, but here black is fine. And according to the engine, the best move for white is knight c5. And now he gives rook c8, again, very cool move. Queen c4 check, king h8, queen f1, just to show you, the main line, the best line of the engines nowadays. Queen g5 check, king h1, bishop takes c5, and it keeps going on and on. Queen f7 now the best move. And finally, computer gives a small advantage to white, but probably it's a draw at the end of the day. I mean, again, the resource absolutely impossible to find. This resource. So I played queen h3. That was my idea, and now, yes, objectively, actually, it's very interesting. But objectively, white has only one way to refute this attack. But okay, it was a try. You probably know about Mikhail Tal, who was beating his opponents at that time when he used to play chess, when he became world champion, with a lot of sacrifices which were objectively not working. After you analyze it with engines, there was always, or most of the time, there was a certain refutation of his brilliant attacking sacrifices. But one thing is after the game, and another story is when you are over the board playing the game. It's much more difficult. So you see, even such a player like Garry Kasparov, he couldn't manage to solve this task. What are the options here for white? Again, it's difficult for white to play it because there are so many options, almost impossible to calculate all those lines till the end. So such a difficult situation practically that I'm not sure that there are many players who would actually find, even on their best day, who would find the best defense for white, and which probably can be considered as a refutation of black's attack. So let's see what are the logical ideas. Of course, black wants to take on g3, to take on e4. Simply, he's just continuing his attack. If rook a2, a very logical defensive move, trying to protect the second rank. But after bishop takes e4, black simply has a very powerful compensation with a lot of threats. Still bishop takes g3 is threatening. And probably white has nothing better than trying to give up already all pawns, to run with a king on the center. Looks extremely scary, but actually it's enough for white to hold the draw in this position. Bishop g6, and the position is equal, believe me or not. But, of course, that I wouldn't worry at all here. So Garry played knight f3, a very human move, just trying to get the knight closer to the king, attacking the bishop on d6, and extremely logical human move, but actually it is a considerable mistake in this position. So the refutation of this sacrifice was by no means easy. So I'm going to show you the line. Queen e2. Queen e2 was the best move, was obviously, definitely Garry was considering this move, I'm absolutely sure. Now the idea is that if bishop takes e4, is already not working. Of course, you cannot take on f4 because of f1, mate on f1, but simply bishop f4. And here, white is just winning, actually. But that wouldn't, that is not the line which was too difficult to see. There is another, possible move, rook f8, which could easily confuse actually white player, because rook takes e4. I just want to take on f4, and you see this diagonal, white diagonal a8 h1 is really a very serious problem for white. But again, computer now finding rook a2. Not easy move here, and for some reason, again, it seems to work. If bishop takes e4, bishop f4, don't ask me why, but here white is close to winning. Or rook takes e4, queen c4 check, king h8, and now very important also resource to see is queen f7, actually attacking the bishop on b7, and this bishop doesn't have actually so many good squares. Very important resource. So here white is close to winning, but even this line is already very difficult to find with white. But of course, bishop takes g3 was also a very serious move here. And now very important to see the following line, knight f5, very important move, because as I understand, after hg the problem is bishop takes e4. Yeah, this can be a very serious problem. Also, it's possible queen takes g3 check maybe as well, yeah, and with the idea queen g2, rook takes f1 check, yeah, and then king f1, rook f8 check, but also bishop takes e4 seems to be very dangerous as well. So the idea is after bishop g3, knight f5. That is a very important resource, and everything seems to work for white here, believe me or not. So now if bishop e5, then bishop b2, bishop takes b2, knight takes b2, and here it's already clear, yeah, that black doesn't have an attack, but he can at least take the second pawn, queen takes b3, knight c4, and in general, due to the fact that there is very limited material, I mean, not too many pawns left for white, and his king is seemingly still pretty weak, it looks like this can be not so clear, but in fact, just the problem that white's knights are too strong. The second knight is getting to d6 from c4, and the black position is pretty bad here. So after knight f5, black's idea is rook takes f5. That was, I think I was trying to calculate it over the board. I just couldn't really manage to calculate it till the end, obviously. I guess same goes for Gary. So now, if ef5, then bishop takes h2 check. This is just a draw. Check, king f2, queen f3 check, and white has to retreat to g1, and black gives perpetual check with queen g4. So rook takes f5 has to be played. Bishop takes h2 check. You see, okay, if you already go all in, yeah, you develop the attack. There is actually rook e8, strange move. It's not enough, but it's not enough. White should be winning, but just to mention that even such slow moves are possible, just attacking the pawn on e4. But the main line is bishop takes h2 check, queen takes h2, queen g4 check. And now the only way for white to play for a win is to get his king in the center under all the possible checks. Because if queen g2, black takes on g2, takes on e4 with check, and after rook f3, rook f8, actually taking back the rook. And again, because of the limited material, the game will end in a draw. But after king f2, queen takes e4, and can you imagine? Yeah, while playing already queen e2, you have to calculate all those variations, and it's still not so clear the situation. Yeah, because of course there is a huge material advantage, but white's king is not feeling safe, and here the only way for white to get a considerable advantage, basically winning advantage, is to play queen e5, not queen h3, which is much more human, just to protect, just that the queen is closer to the king. But now, strangely enough, after rook e8, black is fine here. Again, believe me or not, but black is okay. Bishop b2 and bishop c8, very important resource that pinning the rook, and it's probably equal position. So, but after queen e5, queen, let's say queen g2 check, king e1, There are lots of checks, but nothing works. But still, black has a resource, queen c6. Quite annoying because rook e8 is threatening. Of course, I don't know why it is rook and piece up, but well, rook e8 is a threat. And I think that practically the only way to keep white's advantage is white has a very important resource, bishop g5, rook e8, bishop e7, like this, pinning yourself completely, but at least saving the queen, and finally with, well, good chances to win the game. So, but again, yeah, you see, it's an example how complicated is your practical task. Yeah, it's so difficult to see all this, and also knight f3 is a very serious option. Obviously, the way what Gary played. So yeah, so one thing is, to switch on the engine to, well, which would probably say, oh, it was a blunder, knight f3, queen e2 was winning, and then you might wonder, but why such a player like Garry Kasparov couldn't find it so simple? Yeah, computer shows it in a few seconds. Well, it's not simple, as I explained you. That's why what I mean that you can take risks. Yeah, I mean you can allow yourself to take some risk, also because of this factor. Yeah, very important factor that it's extremely difficult in a practical game to find all the best moves. So Gary played knight f3, and after knight f3, a very human, yeah, again, as I mentioned, move. Of course, bishop takes g3 is an idea, and here already, as strange again as it looks, as it might seem, but white has only one way to make a draw, and even this is not totally 100% sure. I think Gary miscalculated something in one of the long lines. Of course, hg is not an option. Queen takes g3 check, king h1, bishop takes c4, and then taking on f3, white will just get mated very quickly. I don't know what exactly was. I wouldn't exclude that Gary wanted just to play rook a2 in the same fashion, yeah, as we saw already, trying to get the rook on g2. And actually, that would be pretty good, if not a very powerful resource, which we already know in this position, bishop b8. A very, very strong resource. Your bishop is getting to entering the attack via a7. And yeah, there is a pretty forced line. It seems that black is already better here. Let's say if bishop e3, I can just take on e4 simply because knight cannot anymore retreat from f3. The bishop is hanging. So knight c5 is the best move, bishop a7, bishop e3, and now another very important resource, rook ac8, attacking the knight. Knight takes b7 is the best according to the engine, bishop e3, king h1, and I mean, the decisive rook c1. I mean, very important resource. Otherwise, it would all be working for white. But rook c1 is quite painful. Queen d5 check, king h8. And white has nothing better than to take on c1. Queen takes f3 check, rook g2. And black simply takes back on c1, being pawn up and a better position. I don't know if winning or not, but well, with considerable winning chances. So rook a2. Maybe Gary missed bishop b8, and then when already I took on g3, maybe here he had realized already that it doesn't work as well as he thought it would. But he played knight c5, rook takes f3. Well, of course, he didn't miss this rook takes f3. It was quite obvious. And now the decisive mistake was made by Gary. Well, again, rook a2 now was the only saving move. Yeah, not everybody will play this move, rook a2, but it seems that, and actually it's not impossible that what Gary missed, in fact, that maybe he wanted to play rook a2 because now many pieces are hanging, black's pieces. For example, if bishop h2, already simply rook h2, check king h1, and everything's protected. Actually, white is just winning here. So maybe Gary saw that after rook f1 check, queen takes f1, queen f1, king f1, and now two pieces are hanging. Yeah, black's bishop on g3 and bishop on b7, and it's possible that was the miscalculation of Gary, that he missed that there is a rook c8 move, and not only rook c8, but also that, of course, if knight b7, black takes on c1 with check and retreats with his bishop with an advantage. So bishop e3. Now again, two pieces are hanging, and now you should have thought, actually should have seen it when already after black played queen h3, when you play knight f3. On top of all other lots of complicated variation, now you shouldn't have missed bishop f4. That is a key move. That is why everything works. All this line is working for black because of bishop f4. And now, well, white has to suffer in whether this endgame, taking bishop f4. I think good drawing chances, but still you have to make it a draw, or being a pawn down in this position, bishop f4, rook c5, rook a4, probably exchanging the pawns, check, bishop b5. Well, okay. Black should manage. White must be able to manage a draw, but it's a long suffering still. So maybe it's here whether Gary missed bishop b8, whether he more likely that he missed this rook c8, bishop f4. This idea in advance. And now, he understood suddenly that this rook a2, he has to fight for a draw, and without security that he will manage. So he took rook takes f3. I think he decided to force a draw, playing rook takes f3, queen takes h2 check, king f1. And now I want you also to think a bit and to try to find the best continuation, the best how to develop the attack with black. Position is still very complicated, not trivial, but so take your time and find the best move in this position. Well, I think Gary saw that black can force a draw in this position by playing queen h1 check, king e2, queen h2 check. And, white can still go king f1, but king e3 is another attempt to play for a win, but it doesn't work. I mean, white still has nothing more than a draw after queen h6 check. Okay, king e2, queen h2, and in case of king d3, there is a nice variation, queen d6 check, king e2, queen takes c5. And after rook takes g3, queen h5 check, and still the game, white has to repeat moves, because if rook f3, bishop takes c4 is not working, so king e1, and black has also nothing better than a perpetual here, it seems. So queen, I think that seeing that rook a2 instead of knight c5 doesn't, instead of taking on f3 doesn't guarantee a draw. Well, Gary decided, okay, let's resign to a perpetual check. But he missed a very important resource. I hope you found it yourself, because of course it's much easier to find it when I give you a hint that there is something in the position. Bishop c6. This is a killing move, actually. And one important point I want to mention here, that both attacking or defending in such positions, the most you have to be very careful about not missing such moves. So not forcing moves, because especially when in a position like that, white is a rook up, and of course we tend to look, and it's perfectly normal, tend to look for the most forcing continuations, like queen h1 check. You calculate, you see that it's a draw, and it's easy to miss the slow moves like bishop c6, because it's not there is no direct threat after bishop c6. So usually, of course, you are looking for direct threats. But actually, suddenly when you see this move, you realize that white is basically paralyzed here, completely paralyzed. And so pay attention when you're playing such position, pay attention on such moves sometimes, and I would even say pretty often, as we will see, while studying this course, you will see that quite often such moves are the key moves in attack. Bishop c6. So actually, after bishop c6, black just wants to check on b5, rook e8. He simply continues his attack, and white cannot really organize his pieces, get out with his pieces, because, for instance, let's see what are the options. Well, queen d3 would be a very tricky move. I mean, very nice idea, because white is attacking the bishop on g3, and the idea is that in case of bishop b5, white has queen takes b5, ab, rook takes a8, yeah? But queen d3, doesn't work because of simple mate in 2, check on h1, and queen e1 mate. Then what else white can do? Bishop e3, trying to, also very logical, trying to play bishop g1. The problem is after bishop b5 check, knight d3, rook d8. Now, everything is pinned, d3 is hanging, and, actually it's just lost for white, because if bishop g1, black can check on h3, check on g2, and just winning. So then, an interesting move, rook a5, looks tricky, just at least to have after bishop b5 check, rook takes b5. But then black has whether immediately bishop c7, actually a strong move, just attacking the rook, and also pretty bad for white, or maybe even simpler, check on h1, king e2, check on g2, and only after king e3, bishop c7. And if rook retreats, then black continues his attack with rook a8, bishop b6. It's also winning for black. So Gary played bishop g5, but there is no defense anymore. Bishop g5, bishop b5 check, knight d3, and again, there is no direct threats. I mean, for instance, for the moment, queen h1 check is not given much, because king gets to e3, and there is no mate here. But another quiet move, because again, white is completely pinned, as you see that there is no hurry. Yeah, there is no need for black to try to force matters. Rook e8, just getting the rook into the attack, attacking the e4 pawn, and basically finishing the game after rook e8. For instance, if queen d2, queen h1 check, king e2, at least with the idea after queen takes a1 to take on g3, but rook e4 check, rook e3, queen h5 is the most clear-cut way to win. King f1, queen takes g5, and there is a pin, yeah? If rook e4, queen takes d2. So Gary played rook a2. Okay, basically black is just mating already here. Rook a2. Here it's a funny moment, because I had not that much time left, so I calculated a long line, which is clear-cut win, and I just went for it. But actually, I could force a mate in 4 moves, just with checks. But it required a very difficult, psychologically difficult move. Black could just take on d3. Bishop takes d3 check was a forced mate. But when you have such a powerful bishop and this knight on d3 pinned, it's not something which comes to your mind just to exchange this bishop, but actually it's just made with checks. So if queen takes d3, as you already know this motive, queen mates from e1, and if rook d3, queen h3, queen h1, queen g2, and rook takes e4 mate. Okay, it was a more clear-cut way to win the game, but what I played, again, there is a lot in psychology in such positions, because we are human, we have certain patterns. And somehow when you have such a powerful pinning with a bishop on b5, this knight on d3, bishop takes d3 check is not the first move you would consider, at least me. And then since I started to calculate from queen h1 check, then it was good enough. And decided just to play it. Queen h5 check, king e2, rook takes e4 check, the most logical. Now there is a very nice variation. I really liked it. Aesthetically, I have never seen yet a mate like this, at least in a practical game of strong players. So if bishop e3, if white is playing bishop e3, then he's getting mated queen g2 check, rook f2, and queen takes f2 mate. Actually, very funny mate, because the both bishop and knight are pinned. So queen takes f2 mate. So king d2, that's why it's the only move. And then this variation is very forced. Queen g2 check, king c1, queen takes a2. Now already, well, I have material on top of the attack. Rook takes g3, and here, yeah, I calculated this queen a1 check, king c2, queen c3 check, king b1, and now the final blow is rook d4. Rook d4, threatening bishop takes d3 check, and white is not in time with bishop f6 because bishop takes d3 check, king a2, and now bishop b1 check is the last thing I had to see. Also, of course, when I was playing queen h1 check, I calculated this variation. It's not too difficult, it's very direct. And after queen takes b1, rook d2, and black wins. So after king b1, rook d4, Gary resigned. And yeah, of course, it was quite a game. I mean, quite entertaining, very emotional, a lot of calculation, a lot of tension. And yeah, so you probably understand why I decided to start this course with this game. I can probably consider it one of my best games, even if I made a certain mistake at some point. But you see the complexity. It was such a complicated, complex position that I think it's excusable. This mistake can be excused, but otherwise, of course, it was not Gary's best day. But again, even player of such caliber, when you have to defend a lot of different variations, some threats, sometimes hard to understand which threats are real, which are not real, which can be parried, and where it's perpetual, where it's made. Yeah, so difficult, nice game, I believe, and I hope it was also educational for you in some ways. I will, in the meantime, showing this game, I tried to also give you certain advices, and I'm going to continue doing it throughout the course. So for this lesson, that's it, and I will try to move showing my games, attacking games, more or less in a chronological order. Then, so it's quite funny because in the 90s, most of these games I had with black color because I had a very sharp repertoire. Then slowly it was shifting into the side of the white color, so I have many attacks with white already. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and see you on the next lesson, lesson 2. I will show you also quite a memorable game for me, which I played. One of my first victories against very, very top player, and also with black, and also in in a similar style, I would say.